Hey everybody, Greg from parkjourney.com. So yesterday we went out to Universal Studios Hollywood to experience opening weekend of the park. So kind of like what we did with our Magic Mountain video a couple weeks back, I'm going to kind of walk through the park and give my impressions of, all the different protocols and things like that. And in the case of this one too, I'm actually going to talk a little bit about the order that you should do attractions, because there's definitely some attractions that the capacity limits, they're very drastic, and others that probably you can kind of wait and do them later in the day because the capacity limits aren't as bad. So I'll kind of walk through that as well. But before we get into that, make sure you go ahead and click that subscribe button down below. I would greatly appreciate it. So let's go ahead and get into it. So here we are walking in the park. It was about, they opened the gates about 9:10, 9:20. The park was set to open at 10, but they opened it a little early. They have already extended their hours for the next few weekends, up through May 17th, I believe. So they will be opening at 9 on the weekends and some weekdays as well. So make sure you check their calendar for that. But as you can see, it's pretty empty in the park at this time. So first we actually headed straight over to Secret Life of Pets. They hadn't started doing the virtual queue yet, so it was just a couple minutes wait to actually get on the attraction. The attraction itself is super cute. Definitely recommend it. It's definitely a great fit for this park. Something the park has needed for a long time. Just a great family dark ride with a lot of animatronics. No screens, anything like that. They do some really good projection mapping and things like that. So make sure you check out our POV of the ride and the queue as well, because the queue is half of the ride itself as well. The queue is super impressive, so make sure that you check that out. And I really love what they've done with this entire Pets Place area. It just looks so awesome, and it really kind of goes with Despicable Me and everything as well, which is great. Now, one thing I will say about Secret Life of Pets is they do have a test seat outside, and the restraints are kind of like coaster restraints. You can see Gabe here checking out the test seat. Um, Completely unnecessary for this ride as far as I'm concerned, to be honest with you. They really should have changed it to something similar to some of the other dark rides. So that was probably the one miss. Here we are ringing the doorbells for the Minions, just having a fun morning. So basically this was the line as we were getting in. Again, this was before the virtual queue. So after that, we actually headed over into Hogsmeade. Now, I will say that the first two attractions that we rode was Secret Life of Pets and Forbidden Journey and Flight of the Hippogriff. Now, I will say with the Secret Life of Pets, the loading capacity is not reduced at all due to COVID, so you don't really need to get there right away, especially with the virtual queue. You can queue up later in the day with the virtual queue. That is not one of the rides that you're going to see a significant wait time due to COVID restrictions. The other one that we really didn't see a whole lot of restrictions on either was Forbidden Journey. Just because of the way that the ride is actually built. It's 4 across, so typically you're only going to lose maybe 1 or 2 seats per ride vehicle. So it's not that much reduced. But then on the other hand, when you look at things like Jurassic World or the Studio Tour, the capacity is greatly reduced. So my suggestion would be to do Jurassic World and the Studio Tour early before the crowds arrive, and then come back later in the day and do Forbidden Journey and Secret Life of Pets, because those ones really don't have the capacity limits that the other one has. Like with the Studio Tour, they're only, maybe doing 1/4 or 1/3 of the capacity of it. And then same with Jurassic World, they're only loading 3 rows. And your group is on 1 row. So if you're one person, you get an entire row to yourself on both the Studio Tour and Jurassic World. So just keep that in mind as you're planning your day at the park. For example, at this time of the morning, it was about a 20-minute wait for the Studio Tour, and then later in the day, I waited 80 minutes for it. So it was a huge difference here. Whereas Forbidden Journey was, at the same time that the Studio Tour was 80 minutes, Forbidden Journey was about 35 minutes. So you can kind of gauge it that way as well. So again, I would suggest to do that first, the Studio Tour. But I figured take a walk through the queue of Forbidden Journey. Many times you don't get to experience the outside part, so this was kind of nice. So they really aren't using the inside queue at all. You just kind of walk through it. So they're holding everybody out here, and then you walk through to the garden area, because that's kind of outside, and then once they hold you at the door, going into the castle, and then you basically walk all the way to the ride entry. So you get to kind of walk through the entire castle without having to stop and wait. So I did take some video inside, but it came out really dark, so I'm not going to include that here. But you can see here the rest of the queue. And this really is a great outdoor queue. I just love it. So a little Halloween Horror Nights construction for you. Maze outside of the Mummy. Now I will say that there's been some rumors that they're just going to do Hollywood Horror Nights during the day. These mazes with the tents, they get super hot, so I can't imagine them actually doing that, to be honest. So back on the upper lot, this was probably around 1 or so. So you can see it's, the crowds aren't overwhelming. And honestly, when I actually walked through this area again about 3:45, there was probably 1/10 of the amount of people here. So the crowds definitely do die down later on in the day. So keep that in mind too as you're making your plans throughout the day. But again, most people were being cool with the social distancing and mask compliance. We did notice a couple of instances in both the Jurassic World queue and the Studio Tour queue. The distance markers in the queue are a really great idea, but they don't really account for large groups. So if you have a large group of 6 or 8 people, they're basically taking up that entire space between the two markers. In addition to that, the group that was in front of me in Studio Tour queue, they just weren't really being compliant with the masks and stuff. But luckily, they were in front of me. I was able to keep my distance from them. They weren't keeping their distance between the group in front of them. And again, this was about probably 8 people. So it was kind of, had to actually, force myself to, keep my distance. I will say, I think one thing that could help this would be to basically just do every other switchback in both the Studio Tour queue and the Jurassic World queue. I don't know if that's really feasible with the amount of space they have, but that's something that I think would definitely help in that regard. Some more Halloween Hornets construction over here, we presume. And again, as I was saying earlier, I don't really see them doing these mazes outside of the stand stages during the day. If you've ever been in any of these mazes during the day, they are super hot. The workers, they're always taking water breaks, and it gets super hot for them. I can't imagine the talent in the mazes, being there during the day, and also, obviously the people. So I tried to jump up and take a picture over the wall. Obviously, white men cannot jump. Here you can see some more of the designated dining areas, really a lot of them around the park. But again, back to the Halloween Horror Nights. I don't think we'll have a full Halloween Horror Nights this year, but I think we'll have some kind of Horror Nights. But I can't imagine them doing that during the day. So before we get to the end of the video, which is just going to show some of my favorite parts of the studio tour with no commentary or anything like that. So I just want to say overall, I think Universal did a really great job with the social distancing, with the queue areas, with park capacity. I never felt the park was super crowded. I never felt uncomfortable. I think they did a tremendous job with that, so kudos to the Universal team members and Universal management for coming up with a great plan. Obviously, with the Taste of Universal, they had a little bit of practice with that, but super comfortable, super awesome. Definitely looking forward to coming back to the park. The Secret Life of Pets is amazing, as I mentioned, and the updates to Jurassic World are awesome, so make sure you check out our video of Jurassic World as well as that. So again, keep watching for some highlights from the studio tour, Flash Flood and Jaws, and thank you for watching, and we'll see you at Universal Studios.
Alright, let's start with some rain. So as you can see, rain is created by an overhead sprinkler hidden from view. We just shoot water straight up in the air and let it fall naturally like rain. Problem is, when we get too much rain, it can lead to disaster in the form of flash floods, and maybe I want to hit it right for us. Flood was caused by dumping thousands of gallons of recycled water from large tanks in the hill. Suffering sequels. There's another shark out there. Oh no, and the diver's still in the water. We still have a chance to catch that shark. There's some bait tied to the end of that yellow barrel out there. If he takes it, we'll snag him. He's taking the bait. He's taking the whole dock. Gas and electricity, a lethal combination. Well, congratulations, guys. You've just come face to face with Bruce the Shark. Bruce was named after director Steven Spielberg's daughter. Good love, of course. As you can see, he's the only shark around that swims backwards, which is very impressive. Bruce the Shark just as much of a terror off-screen as he was on. In fact, on the first day of filming Jaws, Bruce sank to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, prompting the cast and crew to nickname the production Flaws.
That's a much maligned shark. The shark was frustrating. It didn't really work all the time. It didn't work hardly at all.
Wherever you were on the island, you could hear the radio mics. They were always saying,
What do we got? Oh, hey, this one with the Union Jack on it. That's the car from Mr. Bean. Got the Beetlejuice hearse. Looks like Bumblebee out there, too. I wonder what they're all doing here. Well, hey, maybe they're vacationing. If they are, I hope they didn't